the African Robin Hood, legendary bandits who stole from the rich. For centuries, across the vast landscapes of Africa, stories of rebellion, courage, and justice have echoed through generations. Hidden beneath the sands of time are legends of men who defied the powerful, not for greed, but for justice. These were the outlaws who fought for the people, bandits who robbed the rich and gave to the poor. They were Africa's own Robin Hoods, forgotten heroes whose names still live on in whispers. In a world where the lines between criminal and hero are often blurred, these outlaws became symbols of defiance against oppression. This is the story. Chapter 1. The Sahara Ghost. Ali Colon. Our journey begins deep in the Sahara Desert, a sea of golden sand where caravans carried gold, salt, and slaves across ancient trade routes. It was here that Ali Colon became a legend. Ali Colon was once a slave under the powerful Songhai Empire, but fate had other plans. He escaped his chains and disappeared into the endless desert. Alone and hunted, Ali found refuge among the Tuareg nomads, desert warriors who taught him how to survive in the ash sands. With time, Ali became a leader. He gathered a band of outlaws, men who had lost everything to the empire. They attacked wealthy caravans moving through the Sahara. Gold, salt, and supplies were stripped from the rich merchants and redistributed among the nomads and freed slaves. Ali Colon became known as the Ghost of the Sahara, a name that sent fear through the hearts of traders. His bandits would strike at night, disappearing into the dunes before dawn. To the powerful, he was a criminal, but to the poor, he was a savior. Some say Ali's legend grew so great that the Songhai king eventually pardoned him, offering him a position in the royal army. Whether he accepted or not remains a mystery, but his name lives on as one of the first Robin Hood-like figures of Africa. Chapter 2. The Rebel of Sudan, Osman Digna. Fast forward to the 19th century where the sands of Sudan witnessed another outlaw rise. Osman Digna. Sudan was under the control of the British and Egyptian forces. The people suffered under heavy taxes, slavery, and foreign rule. But in the shadows, resistance began to brew. Osman Digna was a master of guerrilla warfare. He led the Mahdist rebels, a group fighting against colonial oppression. His men would ambush British supply caravans, seizing weapons, food, and horses. But Osman wasn't driven by greed. Every stolen item was distributed among the poor and the fighters struggling for freedom. The British labeled him a dangerous outlaw, but to the Sudanese people, he was the Black Panther of Sudan, a symbol of rebellion. For years, Osman outsmarted the British forces, turning the deserts of Sudan into a battlefield. His legend still lingers in the dusty wind of East Africa, a reminder of how one man's rebellion can ignite a nation's hope. Etron Chapter 3. The Bandit King of Zimbabwe, Nyamatusi. In southern Africa, another outlaw legend was born. Nyamatusi, the Bandit King of Zimbabwe. During the early colonial period, European settlers seized vast lands from the local Shona people. Villages were burned and the people were forced into labor, but Nyamatusi refused to bow. With a small group of loyal fighters, he began raiding colonial farms and trade caravans. Gold, cattle, and weapons were taken, not for himself, but for the villages crushed under colonial rule. Nyamatusi's bandits would disappear into the dense forests after every raid, leaving behind only fear and hope. Though the colonial authorities branded him a criminal, his name became a symbol of defiance. To the Shona people, Nyamatusi was not a bandit, he was a protector. Chapter 4. The Warrior Queen. Queen Nzinga's rebel bandits outlaws were not always men. One of the greatest Robin Hood figures in African history was Queen Nzinga of Indongo and Matamba. During the 17th century, Portuguese colonizers invaded the lands of modern-day Angola. They enslaved thousands and seized control of the region's wealth, but Queen Nzinga refused to surrender. She gathered an army of rebels, including former slaves and outlaws. Her warriors launched surprise raids on Portuguese slave caravans, freeing captives and stealing weapons. The stolen goods were then shared among the villages under her protection. For nearly 40 years, Queen Nzinga's rebel forces waged war against the Portuguese. Her tactics earned her the nickname the Warrior Queen, and her name became a symbol of African resistance. Chapter 5. The Bandits of the Eastern Cape. In South Africa's Eastern Cape, another legend emerged during the 19th century. Small rebel groups known as the Fingo Bandits. Under colonial rule, the Josa people were forced off their lands. Poverty and starvation spread across the region. But in the hills and forests, bands of rebels began fighting.